no gold is not enough.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Geek-A-Tech. First of all, I would say sorry as from last couple of months I'm not able to upload any video due to some technical reasons. But now that technical glitches has been resolved, so now onwards I will again upload my videos weekly. So I am trying to do that, and sorry for that background sound. Okay, so if you are new to my channel, so this channel is regarding the software tools, technologies, and certifications, which I am trying to share with you guys, that what are the new technologies are working in market and what certifications we can do, what are the tools available in case of using the software testing, and how it will help you in your career. And also we will discuss about the approaches, test approaches, not only in the automation part. We will also talk about the manual stuffs also. So before moving towards the today's topic, if you're new to my channel, please do like, share, and subscribe my channel, and don't forget to press notification bell. So let's move on to for the today's topic. So today's topic is automation framework. I would say it's a world of frameworks available in software testing. There are a lot types of frameworks which can be used as per our project need, as per our technology stake and everything. So today we will talk about the test automation frameworks, what different frameworks are available, and what are their pros and cons, and more things. Okay. So this is our agenda for today. So first we will talk about what is automation framework. Then we will talk about use of automation framework, why we should use automation framework, what are the benefits of automation framework. Then later we will talk about different kinds of automation frameworks. And in the last, the most important point, we will talk about how to choose the right framework. So as we have multiple automation frameworks available, so what criteria we should take care before choosing an automation framework. So let's move on. So first, talk about the automation framework. Automation framework is nothing but a set of guidelines like coding standards, how to handle the test data, what kind of object repository we should use, and how we should use it, what kind of specifications we should use. So the beneficial outcome of using the automation framework is higher portability, reduce script maintenance costs, and everything. These are just guidelines. These are not hard and fast rules of any particular automation framework. You can modify as per your need also, but they are basic guidelines. If you use those basic guidelines, then it will be very helpful for you for creating the scripts, for maintaining the scripts, for maintaining your test suite, for maintaining a different kind of things like object repository, for maintaining the test data and everything. Okay. So the use of automation framework. I can automate my application without any framework also, but why we should use an automation framework? So where, as you know, the test applications are not just testing around 5 or 10 different scenarios. They are having multiple scenarios, around 20 to 50 scenarios we can have in a particular application or in a particular functionality. Depends on the variety and the different characteristics provided by that particular application. So as the time grows, our test suite become bulky. So time to time we need to provide changes. If on as a part of UI frame application we talk about, as the movement of time, there are sometimes the new functionality will be added, or some kind of graphics related changes, sometimes branding related changes added to our applications over the period of time. So we need to modify all our test scripts according to that. But what happens if we create a framework? It gives us a very good benefit that we can reuse our code in different scenarios. We don't have to write the same code again and again. We can save ourselves from the redundancy of the code. We can just write down a logic, a script in a standard format, which can be used in multiple places. Like we can create some interfaces which can be used in multiple classes. We can create a method which we can overload, which we can override, something like that. So it will help to provide a maintainability to application with lower cost, and we can integrate different kind of APIs, and we can generate different kinds of reports which help not only us, but it will also help us to the business and to the other stakeholders to understand that what kind of automation we are doing and how it is beneficial for the application, and not only for to the application, how it is beneficial for the product also, and how it is beneficial for the business also. So framework also helps not only the business side, it also helps the engineers to write down the test cases, and they can identify that okay, we have a similar kind of scenarios, so how we need to handle those things, how we can structure them properly, so we can easily identify the scenarios, or we can easily identify the methods which is need to be reused again and again. So now let's talk about the benefits of automation framework. Utilizing a framework for automated testing will increase a team's test speed and efficiency, improve test accuracy. It will reduce time, maintenance cost, as well as lower the risk. As we talked about that, we are using certain guidelines. We are trying to create certain set of methods which can be reused in different classes, and if that particular, and we can create a scenario file which can be used in um, different methods, different classes. We can use them, and we can leverage them in our different aspects of the application, like we can use certain methods in at the API level, but and we can leverage them in our UI automation also. So it's a very good benefit. Like we can create some property files from where we can derive the values, which can be very helpful for us. So there are the key reasons of using the automation framework. The first one is it improves test efficiency. Second, lower the maintenance cost, because we are reusing the things, and we know how to if we need to refactor something, then we know, okay, we need to just refactor only at one place, and it will give us impact on all the places. So we don't have to put more and more efforts. Minimum manual interventions, maximum test coverage, reusability of code. So reusability of code is the very big and important aspect in the automation framework. So if we have certain scenarios which are repetitive scenarios in different part of the application, then we can use that same method, or you can say if we have created some certain kind of assertions for the verification of suppose some images or some list, so we can reuse those method, and we can use them in at different parts of the application. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of automation frameworks. So these are around seven automation frameworks which I identified that there might be other more frameworks available, but most used frameworks, most popular frameworks are these frameworks. First one is linear scripting framework, which is quite a little bit old and out of date right now. The modular testing framework, which is quite acceptable in many companies. Data-driven testing framework. Then we will talk about keyword-driven testing framework. Later on, we will talk about hybrid testing framework. Then we will talk about the TDD. So the test-driven development framework is more commonly used by the developers for the unit testing part, or while they are developing any application. It's not that much related to QA side, but yes, again, it's a testing framework, so we will talk about it. Then the most popular and most recent framework is BDD development framework. So we will talk about in depth about these frameworks, their pros and cons, what these frameworks do. Okay. So first we will talk about the linear scripting framework. So this framework is based on the concept of record and playback. Okay. So you know, in the starting when the Selenium IDE arrived at that particular time, most of the tools were available on basically on the record and playback. So it has a few flaws. It has a few of the advantages. Typically, in this the scripting driven framework, the creation and execution test case is done individually. It is in this framework the effective way to start it for the enterprises. If your product is in very initial stage, your enterprise is in very initial stage, you don't want to spend much more time in creating the scripts. You have certain scenarios, some kind of smoke which you want to run frequently, then you can use this linear scripting framework. This automation scripting can be done in incremental way, where we can in every new iteration we can add the more uh, automation test cases. So there are certain such pros and cons. So we will talk about its pros first. It doesn't require a large writing custom code. It expertise only test. Also doesn't require any test or automation expertise. You don't require any kind of code writing skills for that. You just need to understand the tool, and you just need to record in, and whatever actions you are doing, you need to just record that action, and you need to replay it while whenever the deployment done. Then everything related to script is defined inside the script. Does not need to care about the abstraction, code duplication, as we talked that there is no more, no much. We can say there's no more much need for the coding. Then we will talk. Then the recording playback normally generate the linear code. Easy to get start for any starting point. If you want to do automation, if you have lesser code knowledge, if you or you don't have any code knowledge, then it's very good in this if you want to start something. The cons are that the data is mostly hard coded. Every time you need to verify only hard coded data. If there are certain variable kind of results you are getting, or some variety in your output, then it's not good to use this scripting framework. Test scripts are less reusable and maintenance hassle, because with the period of time it got increase in the size, we cannot modify or refactor the code easily, or sometimes we cannot do it because of the record and play we are doing. So now let's talk about the modular testing framework. So what the modular testing framework is the abstraction concept of the framework on which this framework is built. Okay, so it's talk about the different modules. The independent test scripts are developed to test the software. Especially an abstraction layer is built for the components to be hidden from the application under test. So this sort of abstraction concept ensures that the changes made to the part of the application does not affect the underlying components. So it's we are using this framework on based on the modular size, the different modules. For a particular module, we are creating the scripts and we are testing those module, and then we are creating the other test scripts for the different module. So it will not impact each other until unless they are interacting with each other. So there are certain pros and cons. The framework introduced the high level of modularization, which leads to easier and cost-effective maintenance. Framework is pretty much scalable. If the changes are implemented in one part of the application, only test script representation as a part of the application needs to be fixed, and to leave the other parts untouched. As we have talked about the different modules. So if we are making some changes in one module, which has if the test scripts are make specific for that module, then we don't need to change in the entire test script which is interacting with the other modules. So it's quite good thing that if we make changes, then we need to test on that particular module only. The disadvantages of this framework: while implementing the test script for each module separately, we embedded the test data into the test script. Thus, whenever we are supposed to test with a different set of test data, it requires some manipulations to made in test script also. So whenever our test data changes, we need to make the changes on test script also. So it's very painful job to do in this particular testing framework. Now let's talk about the data-driven testing framework. So in this testing framework, a separate file in a tabular format, we store both input and the expected output result. In this framework, the single driver script can execute all the test cases with multiple set of data. So what it will do, suppose we have created some input and the output in the Excel file, and we provided them this data to should be passed from here, and the all the assertions we have mentioned in this separate column. So it will verify those data. The driver script contains the navigations that spread throughout the program, which covers both reading the data files and logging the test information also. So what it will do, it will reading the test data, and it will also log the test status information, that test case is pass or fail based on the assertions which we have provided in the other column. So there are certain pros and cons also for this framework. Pros is that we can create our scripts independent for even when the development is going on. Redundancy and unnecessary duplication of creation of automation test scripts gets greatly reduced to this modular type of design, and due to the use of files and or the records of both input as well as verifying the data, as we are providing the input and output both in the file, so we can use those data again and again if we want to use for the certain other different scenarios. In case of any change in functionality, we just need to revise our particular business function script. Information like data inputs or output expect result to get stored in the form of convenient managed text records. So so whatever the results we got from our test scripts, we are just recording it into a particular text format. The cons are this calls a great expertise in scripting language required by the automation tool. So we need to learn the scripting part when we use the data-driven testing framework. For every test case, we need to maintain data files. As yes, we are maintaining both the input and the output results, and we are logging the results also. So we need to maintain different data files for that, and it will create quite hassle for us. Hence, the test case need to be keep the data files in different directories, so it will take the space also. Test engineer is required to re-enter the test data, the test plan data, and various concerned data files in addition to managing the detailed test plan. So the keyword-driven testing framework. So what keyword-driven testing framework will do is an application-independent framework. Okay, so we use the data tables and the keywords for the action to be performed on the application. This is more called as the keyword-driven framework for the web-based web-based application. It's mostly useful for the UI applications or the web-based applications, which is stated as the extension of the it is a kind of extension of data-driven testing framework. Okay, so there are certain pros and cons of keyword-driven testing framework. First, we can create the detailed test plan having desired inputs and verification data in simple form of convenient spreadsheets. In case of some expert having expertise in scripting language using the automation tool, that can also we can utilize their scripts. Before the creation of detailed test plan, the testing engineer is able to use the automation tool immediately through the spreadsheet input, and he or she need not master to concern about the scripting language actually used by the automation tool. Cons: the tester is required a huge expertise in the scripting language to test the tool, and he or she successfully created customized function is also required to be create some. The tools are providing some functions, but many times what happens for requirement of our applications says that we need to customize our functions. So it requires the customization in a particular application, although the statement valid for all the methods as well. So hybrid testing framework. So what this framework will do, it will take certain things from different frameworks. It will take the good parts of different frameworks, like it takes some part of the modular testing framework, the data driven framework. We can put some keyword framework, the keyword driven testing frameworks. So hybrid framework we can create our own. There is no certain rules that okay, these frameworks you can merge or integrate with each other. It depends on our application nature or the available resources, and whatever technological stack we have available with us. So based on that, we can create a hybrid testing framework. So there are certain pros and cons for that. The main advantage of this approach that we can use best features of all the frameworks. So if we think that certain things are available in modularized framework, if certain things is available in BDD framework, then we can use those things. So the cons that the framework is highly complex because we are trying to merge different frameworks on that. So it will create complexity. And one person who is using or creating this framework, he should require a good programming expertise, because this framework required to be create from the scratch every time, because there might be a chance that first hybrid framework we were using modular testing framework and the data driven, but now this time we are using keyword and data driven testing framework. So a person should have a good knowledge of the framework as well as the programming languages also. TDD. So this testing framework is mostly used by the developers for creating their unit test cases. So what the TDD is means that first test the thing, fast fail, then create the things. So it is not a pure framework used by the testers, but mostly used for the by the developers for developing an application. So what they do earlier, in the traditional approach, we first create the application, then we test it. Okay, the developers test it. They create the unit test cases after creation of the application. But now in TDD, what they do, they are creating certain scenarios first, and based on those scenarios, they are trying to create their code. So it's very good approach. Again, it's not an easy approach, but it's very helpful approach. It's having great advantages over the traditional frameworks. So there are certain pros and cons. Let's talk about this. Because you are writing the very small tests at the time, so it forces you to code to be more modularized. So as based on those scenarios, we are creating our application, or we are writing the code. So it gives us a modularized facility. TDD helps us to learn and intense and the understand the principle of good modularized design. It helps the programmer really understand their own code. So what they are creating, they can easily understand by the writing the scenarios first, so they can understand that okay, for this particular scenario I am writing the code, or I have to write the code. It helps to clarify the requirements, because we need to figure out first the inputs, what input we are trying to feed and what output we are expecting. So before creating the application, we should identify the inputs and the outputs and the outcomes of that particular functionality. So it gives us very much clarity on the requirements. It also prevents the defects, as in the TDD approach, the development is done as per the scenarios which we of the on basis of those scenarios we are creating the application. So it identifies the defects early, and which is easier to fix. There are certain disadvantages also. It's very hard to create the TDD approach for the existing legacy code, because you don't have unit test cases. Your code was already there, so it's very hassle for using the TDD approach in your legacy applications. If your application is new, if you are creating your application from scratch, then it's very good. Sometimes you have to mock a lot of things, which is a very difficult task, because you need to mock the different methods, you need to mock the constructors, sometimes you need to mock the complete classes also. So it's not an easy task. And if the early stage refactoring requires refactoring the test classes also. Okay, if you are refactoring your code, whatever the code you have written, and if you want to refactor those methods, then also you need to refactor your test cases also, your test classes also. Let's talk about the BDD framework. So this framework is highly acceptable in software testing framework right now. And it's quite new framework. I'm not saying quite new, but it's very popular framework, and it's derived from the TDD approach. That method should focus more on the behavior side of the product. So we should more focus on the behavior of the product. So this approach, the testers can create the simple Gherkin files which are written in English. We can create the like feature files or story files in English language, which can be easily understood by the business developers and the testers. And even these feature files or the scenario files can be created by a non-technical person also. If he is having good understanding on the requirements, then he can write the feature files, the scenarios, what the products wants, what are different requirements, how products behave. So a non-techie person can also write the feature files. There are certain pros and cons for the BD frameworks. So the pros is that living documentation, as we are writing the feature files, so it gives a very good connectivity between the documentation and the test class, because we are getting the continuous feedback. So we are improving our feature files and everything. Domain specific language. So BDD encourages the usage of domain specific language. So encompasses the terms peculiar in the domain of your business, and therefore is useful in defining the project specific with the greater precisions. Compartmentalization. BDD encourage you to define the specification and acceptance test in smaller, more manageable units. So you are having smaller chunks, having small scenarios for a particular feature. You have around five different scenarios. If you have negative scenarios, then you can create a different negative scenarios feature files also. So you have a very categorization. Okay. The act of defining the individual scenarios is in dedicated feature files encourages participants to work on specific and a neat chunk. Okay, if you are having certain scenarios, so you need to focus on those scenarios, then you not need to worry about the other features right now while you are creating something at that particular point of time. Cons, it's time overhead. Creating this and maintaining it's required a good amount of investment of time. Uh, they are for normal for the short and small projects it may not be worth, but in projects which is having many iterations you will identify see its return on investment. Yes, but if you have a very small project, then it's not worth to invest at that particular amount of efforts. But yes, if you have a big project then which needs around 10 to 20 iterations, then it's very good to use this BDD approach. Communications, there needs to be good amount of communication between the person who's writing the feature file and the person developing the automation code. Sometimes what happens if that the person who is writing the automation code, if he is writing the feature file, then it's very good. But certain amount of time, the same what happens in the teams that the manual testers they are writing the manual test cases in BDD format, so the automation guy can leverage those BDD scenarios in his feature files. So it's very what happens sometimes what person X understand from a particular sentence and what the person Y understand from that particular sentence, it varies. So it's sometimes create confusions. Okay. uh, it's very time consuming because retrospectively putting the BDD in existing project. If your project is new, if you are creating from scratch, then it's very good. You can directly use BDD. It's very helpful. But if you have a separate framework already created, if you are using an existing framework, if you are using JUnit framework, if you are using keyword driven framework or data driven framework, and you are trying to modify them in BDD framework, then it will take huge amount of time, as we need to understand the cost first, and it's very costly to convert the existing framework into the BDD framework. So this is all about the different kinds of frameworks. There are various tools available in the market for which are supporting these frameworks for like BDD. BDD framework we have Cucumber, we have JBehave. For JUnits frameworks, we have for the GZ we have JUnit, we have JMokito, and different kinds of frameworks are available in the software world. So now, if how I choose the right automation testing framework, if I am having around this seven kinds of framework, so it make me confused. Okay, if this is my new project and how I should start. So it's a very important question coming to the mind when you start writing your automation testing test cases. You might think that what kind of framework I should select, because every framework has different pros and every product and every framework has their own cons. So we need to emphasize on certain points which help us to select the framework. So there are a couple of points which I have mentioned over here, which helps us to identify a framework. So the first one is adaptability. So this criteria says that ease of use, deployment, the learning curve, how much learning curve it requires, how easy it's deployed, and what kind of development language I am using. I need to use Java? Do I need to use Python, or I need to use .NET? I need to use TypeScript. So it's how much my team is easily can adapt those certain aspects. So it's a very, very big important aspect to understand before selecting any kind of framework. Reusability is a very key aspect, that how much reusable can framework. Suppose if I am creating a framework in TypeScript because of Angular, but my other products, like four or five more products, they are developed in Java and core Java only. If I am creating only that Angular application in TypeScript, using that TypeScript framework, the use of the framework as a TypeScript language, then it is not easy for me to use them in the different Java projects. So the how much it can be reusable if I am using a BDD framework. If suppose if I am having five different projects which are developed in Java and they are smaller projects, so I can go for data-driven framework. I can go for keyword framework. But if I am having five different projects which are good applications, which I am having a good web applications which has around 20 pages or 10 pages, or the development requires around 6 months of efforts to develop those. So I can go for BDD, which is more. If I am having the UI part, then the web applications, then I should go for the BDD, because it gives the business an end-to-end view about the application, so they can understand, okay, if I click on that button, then I will get this message and everything. But if in case if I am going for APIs, then there might be a certain aspects where more technical emphasis on there. So might be I not choose BDD, I will choose certain other frameworks, JUnit frameworks, or whatever framework if I want to use, or the keyword driven frameworks I can use for that. Reporting is a very key aspect of the automation framework. So what kind of reporting I am getting? Suppose if I am using default if I am using the JUnit for my testing framework, which is a keyword-driven framework, and I'm using only is a part of JUnit. So if I am getting a very raw reporting on that, if it is my framework is not supporting a good in-depth detailed then it will not be a very useful framework for me, because I if that framework gives me only a very limited amount of information from the report, and it's create a hassle for me to identify the issue, then it's not a good framework for me. If suppose if I am using if I am having UI applications, the web-based applications, and if my report which are provided by Cucumber or Extent report, which gives me a very certain good amount of detail information, so I can use those frameworks, because whenever my business see the testing part which I have performed on the web-based application, and gives them a proper in-depth knowledge about the my testing, that okay, for this particular scenario, this I received this error, and it's give me a good amount of some graphical interface to understand. Okay, then it's a very good thing to use those things. So the another aspects are extensibility. How much I can extend my framework. Okay, if my application is huge, or it's getting different features every time, so how much libraries are available, how much components can be I can do a testing on those, how many test scenarios I can include. So this is a very key aspect for that, and how it can be integrated with CI/CD, which is a very, very important aspect. My testing tool or my testing framework is is uh, eligible for integration with CI/CD or not. So what kind of environments and platforms it's supported? Suppose if my framework is not supported on Mac OS, or it's not supported on Linux, if it's only supported Windows, then I need to rethink about my end users point of view, that okay, if my end users were using different OSs, then my automation framework should be so much flexible that it can be run on different OS and different platforms. It should be easy maintenance. So maintenance should be very easy. And the support, the last point is support. So whenever we are creating an automation testing framework, so support should be available there. There many times happens that when we are stuck with something and we are trying to identify so we can those solutions. So so the support community should be there for us. So there, a good amount of support should be available, which helps us to which help us to resolve the blockers for us. So this is all about the automation testing frameworks. I think it helps you to understand that how to select a framework, what kind of different frameworks, and what are their pros and cons. I try to cover only a overview part, so this is not an in-depth analysis on the automation testing framework. I will try to create a separate video on each and every automation testing framework, but yes, this will give an overview about different kinds of automation testing frameworks. It will help you to understand that okay, these are the basic aspects of this automation frameworks. These are the pros and cons. If I want to select some automation framework, then for which automation framework I should go. So in my upcoming videos, I will try to create separate individual video on every test automation frameworks with their detailed analysis that how to create those frameworks, how they can help us, what are their benefits, and detail everything. So thank you, guys. Thank you for your love and thank you for your support. Thank you very much.